everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. It's Tuesday and the patch notes for patch 9.9 have been posted, and that means it's time for another patch note rundown. As always, I'll be going through the biggest changes of this week's patch and letting you guys know what you can be looking forward to in the coming weeks. 9.9 is a very large patch. There are a bunch of huge changes for a collection of highly sought after champions in professional play, especially Aatrox, Tahm Kench, Rakan, as well as a whole bunch of changes aimed at runes, and some other things that are actually really going to tweak the meta and tweak which champions are really seeing play right now. So settle in, this one might be a little bit longer than before, but with all that said, let's go ahead and jump right into things. First and foremost, starting off with Aatrox. The biggest problem with him right now is Aatrox has really been about diving in and one-shotting you, guaranteed because of his revive, which keeps him safe. So Riot are adjusting him, so he's a lot more about being in the thick of fights and being a lot more of a drain tanking juggernaut as opposed to just a one-shot guy who lands all of his Q parts and just kills you outright. So first and foremost, he did take a huge tank to his base health regen, but that's because he has a lot more innate healing on his kit, starting with Deathbringer Stance. He lost the mutilation in exchange for healing based off of the passive auto attack, which he'll also get significantly more often because the cooldown is just 15 seconds, and he now gets 2 seconds off per attack on enemy champions. So as long as he's able to be in the thick of fights, he'll get Deathbringer Stance back up that much more often, and will heal based on this attack as well. The Darkened Blade now it doesn't go on cooldown until after you finished casting the ability entirely, but the cooldown is now 6 seconds at level 9, so especially you've already completed your cleaver by then with 20% CDR, you're almost always going to have Q available. The damage actually also got a buff at its maximum rank as well, so Aatrox in general is almost always going to have access to the Q to just keep fighting. Infernal Chains took a hefty nerf on this patch. It's down to 25% slow at all ranks, which is a normalization buff, so it's better at earlier levels, but the cooldown is now 26 seconds from 18, so you really got to make sure you hit this ability in lane because it will not come back up. But you also have Q more reliably to trade with, so it's an even trade, I would say. Umbral Dash just gives you more healing. It's any non-periodic damage versus champion, so anything that procs magic damage and the like will still give you the healing. And finally, moving on to World Ender, which is the biggest changes. It doesn't give you the revive for free anymore, but if you're able to get a takedown, you get 5 extra seconds in World Ender, it refreshes the bonus movement speed, and then gives you the revive. So unless you can get that first frag, World Ender will not guaranteed revive you. That's going to be the biggest changes Aatrox mains will have to learn. But if you were good at getting that first kill, you're going to be in a great spot. I can especially see this being used to dive underneath the tower, kill the guy, get the revive, and then walk out as the tower kills you. That would be pretty cool. The movement speed is also now a percentage movement speed that decays over World Ender's duration. So you're not going to have it in combat, but you will be able to just pop out immediately going onto enemy champions right as you press the button. And you get increased healing during World Ender, so you should be able to really smash some champions. I think overall this is a big buff to Aatrox. I think it requires him to be played in a little bit different style than he was before, but I just straight think this is just going to be better for Aatrox. Now that he doesn't have a guaranteed revive, right, we're able to inject a ton more power into the kit, and I think he's going to be back to being played quite a bit in top lane. Maybe not as we saw before with the lethality builds, but definitely going to be quite strong. Moving on to Blitzcrank, very briefly touching on him, right, are sort of normalizing the randomness on his ultimate. He did get VFX updates along with a few other champions I'll talk about a little bit later. The biggest thing to note here is that Mana Barrier got very slightly nerfed. It only gives him 30% maximum mana shield, and the Q Rocket Grab additionally shows the actual width and distance of the hook more consistently, so you'll know if that hook actually hit you as opposed to saying, how did that hit? Moving on to the R, it no longer randomly hits enemies nearby. Instead, while his ultimate's off cooldown, his basic attacks mark targets that he hits, and enemies that are marked take magic damage after a 1 second delay. So now there's a bit more thought process behind, I grabbed a guy, I just press R immediately in order to prevent him from flashing away. Now it's sort of the case of, okay, I grabbed a guy, I want to get the Power Fist so I can get the R passive ability off, then press R so I get that damage, then the Lightning Bolt comes down, potentially more damage overall. So some interesting tweaks to Blitzcrank. Let me know what you guys are thinking of all of that once you've played him down in the comment section below. Rakan is getting some pretty major changes on this patch. He is no longer going to be able to have the RW instant combo. Instead, there's a half-second delay after casting the quickness where he cannot cast Flash or Grand Entrance. So your opponent will always have a half-second reaction time to say, Rakan is ulting, here comes the W, here comes the Flash. However, in exchange for that combo being removed, Riot have buffed up some other parts of Rakan's kit. His base armor, base health have been increased, he's got some more resistances going, and Grand Entrance now has a dash speed of 1700, so he'll be able to more easily get in with it. So I think generally it is going to be an overall nerf. Rakambo was just too good, and it really made him strong. But he does have a whole bunch of other base stat buffs in this patch as well, so we'll have to kind of see where he lands. I think he'll be a little bit weaker than he was before, but half second isn't that much time, so I still think he is a great pick for the bottom lane. Soraka is also receiving some big adjustments in order to prevent her from being a poke bot and make her more of a healer like she was always supposed to be. Right now her best build is basically Emax and constantly spamming damage at you, and Riot want her to be more about beating you by sustaining through all of your damage. Accordingly, Star Call is now, it has a scaling cooldown, so starting at 8 seconds and moving down to 4 by the time it hit max rank. The Rejuvenation self-heal was actually buffed, but the damage has been pretty significantly decreased. It's down 30 points at maximum rank, and the Rejuvenation movement speed, though, is increased. It's decaying, but it goes up to 30%, so you can really get some speed off. This is a lot more about the healing and transferring the Rejuvenation over to your allies than it is about the damage anymore. And sort of accordingly, Equinox has also been nerfed. Its cooldown is down, and its mana cost has been increased, though, at all ranks, and the damage has also been absolutely gutted. It used to do 230 at maximum rank, now it does 170 at maximum rank, so there's just no reason to ever max Equinox now. Qmax is probably the best playstyle for Soraka alongside W in order to really make sure you can get that healing off. You won't be doing as much damage, but the healing actually looks pretty good, so excited to see how these changes shake out. And unfortunately for all of you Tahm Kench mains out there, Tahm Kench is getting hugely nerfed on this patch. I don't even need to talk about anything else on here. The biggest thing you need to know is that his W now grounds and slows him by 95% on Ally Devour, which is the same as when he devours an enemy champion. What this means is that when you see the gank coming, Tahm Kench can't just scoop up his ally in his mouth and run to safety. In fact, he can barely waddle anywhere at all because 95% slow. He ain't going nowhere. Now, funnily enough, you can still cleanse this with the like of a QSS or a cleanse summoner spell or something along those lines, because those are crowd control effects on Tahm Kench that he can get rid of. So I actually could see Tahm Kench taking Spellbook and running Cleanse in lane in order to just scoop up his ally in a desperate situation, pop Cleanse, and still run to safety. But that's a lot more niche, and it really removes some of Tahm Kench's ability to just always keep his allies safe. So it's definitely going to be a huge hit to his professional viability and just generally his strength. He does get Devour more often. It's down to 20 seconds at all ranks rather than scaling down. The mana cost has also been increased. In general, Tahm Kench, the biggest reason you pick Tahm Kench has been nerfed. Now, Tongue Lash did get some minor buffs. Thick Skin got some minor buffs. Abyssal Voyage got a pretty big buff to its range, and it's but a slight nerf to its cooldown. But in general, Tahm Kench is going to be so much weaker because he is all about that W and just doesn't have that available anymore. So I would expect to see him really fall off in professional play. Just not being able to get his allies to safety is a big nerf to why we played Tahm Kench. So we'll have to see, though. These might not be as bad as I'm thinking, or as bad as I'm making them out to be. We'll have to see at the end of the day what people continue to do with Tahm Kench. Moving on to some of the smaller changes, some of the bigger ones we're looking at here. Darius is getting another buff on this patch. He now heals for 45% of his missing health if he hits 3 champions with the Blade of his Decimate. I don't want to say Darius is going to be a meta pick, but I do want to highlight the fact that he's been getting some small buffs patch after patch after patch for a while now, and he might be starting to hit that critical mass of buffs to the point where he can be played in professional play, where he is getting very strong and sort of comes back to be the king of top lane. We'll have to see. I'm still skeptical about this, but definitely something to keep your eye on over the next few patches. Hecarim is getting some small nerfs, right? Really like that he ramps up over the course of a fight, but he really can kind of just kill you in one hit right now with his current playstyle. So right over nerfing the bonus damage he gets from Rampage, he now only gets 5% bonus damage per stack rather than 10%, and Devastating Charge has been devastated in terms of its damage. It is now only doing 330 from 370 at a maximum rank, so Hecarim will really be dealing less damage up front. You'll have to try and ramp up the Rampage damage over the course of a fight in order to do as much damage as you used to. Jarvan IV is getting a huge nerf on this patch. I don't really know why, but he is. The base stats is mostly just cleanup. It is a nerf. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But his W, the bonus shield he gets, is now 1.5% of his maximum health per enemy champion hit at all ranks. There is no scaling here at all. So there's absolutely no reason to ever max W until last. I mean, it just doesn't do you any good. It doesn't scale up anymore. It's just not that great. And then Demacian Standard's cooldown was increased by just 1 second. I think that's just because so they can have round numbers, but this is a pretty large nerf to Jarvan IV. If you ever built him tank, it's just not there anymore. He doesn't get as much HP on the shield. I just think that's not going to work. Lethality Jarvan is still good if you're going the QE max. You're still plenty happy, but if you did try to play Jarvan tank in the top lane, the build just isn't there for him anymore. Ken is getting some small nerfs here. He no longer has the resistances on his E. They've been moved to his R activation instead, and that's so that Emax Kennen isn't super safe in lane. He doesn't get to keep those resistances when he's maxing E, gets a bunch of damage, gets the bonus movement speed, and resistances on top of that. Instead, he only gets those when he actually decides, I'm going in for the fight, let's do this. So that is a fairly substantial nerf to Kennen, I would say. Doesn't do a whole lot for the amount of bully he can do in lane, though, especially with Kleptomancy. Lysandra is getting a small damage buff, which I know you're already panicking about, but Aftershock is seeing some changes in this patch, so stay tuned for that. And finally, Rek'Sai is taking some small nerfs. She's lost some base AD and base AD growth. Additionally, her Furious Bite is actually doing significantly less damage than it used to, so this should only take the edge off Rek'Sai. I think she'll still be really strong and definitely playable, but I don't think she'll be quite as must-pick or ban as she currently is. Finally, getting on to some VFX updates here. Ashe, Caitlyn, Jax, and Renekton are all receiving some minor changes to their VFX, so they should be looking a lot better. Look forward to seeing those in your games coming up. And let's get on to the meat here. Aftershock is getting nerfed, and that's because right now it's intended as a tank rune, but it's best on mages who can really use that additional resistances to just survive through any degree of counterattacks that their opponents try to throw at them. So accordingly, the bonus armor and magic resistance are now granted based on your bonus armor and magic resistance. So if you're not building armor and magic resistance, you just won't get that much. This doesn't scale up with level anymore. It scales with your resistances, which means it's better for tanks, worse for literally everybody else. Additionally, the damage is the same, but now it only has max health scaling and no longer has AD or AP scaling. So you won't get any damage off of this either if you aren't building tanks. So this is really going to put a nail in the coffin on Aftershock Lysandra and Aftershock mid laners in general. I really do feel like it's just going to be a tank rune. Let's hope Riot throw in some buffs to Fiddlesticks, because he was also nerfed as a result of abusing Aftershock, and he hasn't gotten any compensation buffs on this patch, so hopefully they remember and throw our Scarecrow some love. Finally, moving on to some minor rune tuning. Generally speaking, Riot feel that they pulled too much power out of runes and are trying to add some back so that you have more thought processes behind, does this rune let me sustain in lane, which is kind of the current situation where you just go inspiration for all the sustain runes and don't take anything else. Now, I won't go through all of these individually, but suffice to say that all of these runes are actually getting a small buff, except Magical Footwear here, which is getting nerfed and now has a 12-minute free boots timer as opposed to a 10-minute free boots timer, but everything else here is getting slightly buffed, so hopefully this gives some more competition to inspiration as opposed to just going there for the sustain. And finally, the Rift Scuttler's first spawn happens significantly later in the game. It's now 3:15 from 2 minutes. The reasoning behind this is that by forcing the spawn time later in the game, players have a little more time to plan out before deciding if they want to go for the Rift Scuttle Crab or not. And it's also less about, do I have a better level 2 than them? Do my lanes have a better level 2 than their opponent? Right now, that's really where the case is, and that you just want strong lanes so you can guarantee the Scuttle Crab when your team comes down to collapse. By moving it back to 3:15, players have a little bit more time to get experience. Maybe you have time to fit in a recall before you go for the crab, and that really makes it so that there's more thought process behind it, and there are better fights, as opposed to literally just, well, the Rek'Sai is level 2, I can't fight her at all. So we'll see if that does some changes to make the jungle feel a little bit less frustrating to play. Anyways, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you all so very much for watching. Let me know what you guys are most excited for in the patch. I know there's a lot of stuff here, so definitely make sure you read these notes and keep them in mind before going into your games tomorrow. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed it, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, linked down in the description. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.